All right. Our next panel today, we're gonna get our chairs up here, and so while the chairs get up here, our next panel today, I'm going to introduce you to our moderator for that panel. So joining the stage is Joyce Deuley. She is our senior research and content analyst at Zpryme. Help me welcome Joyce Deuley to the stage, everybody.
Are we getting chairs or are we standing?
Yeah.
Hello? Okay, excellent. Hi, everybody. Welcome. Thank you very much, Ricky. So I have the pleasure of welcoming onto the stage for the Innovation for the Future, Reimagining the Meter as a Grid Sensor. Today we're welcoming Carlos Nouel and Jay Lasseter here with us. Carlos serves as the VP of Smart Solutions at National Grid, where he is responsible for leading grid transformation and modernization strategy and deployment. With more than 13 years of service at National Grid, Carlos is a recognized leader and innovator, passionate about ensuring a brighter energy future for generations to come. He has traveled from his home outside of Boston, Massachusetts to join us today. Jay serves as the VP of Industry and Growth at Landis+Gyr, where he is responsible for strategy, sales and marketing, commercial operations, and industry solutions. With nearly 14 years of service to Landis+Gyr, Jay is dedicated to building lifelong customer partnerships. He is also a member of the board of directors for the GridWise Alliance, and he has traveled from his home in Denver, Colorado to join us. Can we give them a warm welcome as they come on stage?
It's like being at home. We've got, a little bit of shuffling here of furniture. So thank you very much for that introduction. Carlos, good to see you.
Good to see you, Jay.
Nice to be out here in the wild. Thank you, everyone, for being here today. Hey, just maybe a couple comments and thoughts as we get started here. First of all, I was struck by a couple things in the opening speakers, and I really hope we're going to hit some of that today. But part of our goal today is not necessarily to sit here and get everyone nodding at us, okay? I think part of the thing I really appreciate working with Carlos and National Grid broader is their ability to kind of think bigger picture, think more long-term. And what we're doing together is unique in many different ways. And we want to talk about that a little bit today and maybe get a couple of you going, what? Okay, does that make sense? And that's okay, right? Again, nodding isn't exactly what we're looking for. But before we get into that, let's talk, maybe, kind of lay the landscape a little bit about National Grid. Obviously, Carlos knows Landis, National Grid very well. And funny enough, Carlos, I don't know if you know this, I started my career.
I did not know that.
Okay, at, Niagara Mohawk, okay, NIMO. I guess I was a Nintendo guy too. I'm dating myself, okay. But back in the late 90s, and we were doing an innovative project then, okay, on what we'd now call the OT side of things. But it was the energy delivery systems kind of running into Y2K and really a modernization effort to help Niagara Mohawk, NIMO at the time, get ready for that transition, right? So I think there's a long history of doing innovative projects at National Grid, and I'm excited to be doing one with you as well. So maybe just to start, if you would please, Carlos, just a little background for the audience, just so everyone's level set on National Grid, and then we'll kind of get into the good stuff from there.
Sure. So good afternoon, everyone. First event after COVID, which is weird to see people in 3D and not seeing them on a computer, so it's actually pretty cool. But I would say the highlight of my panel today is going to be the fact that this apparently it's being streamed on YouTube. So my kids are finally going to believe that I'm cool because I'm actually on YouTube, which is the only thing they do. So if it is in fact in YouTube, I'll be probably a better dad after this panel. And second of all, I cannot see anyone on the audience. The lights are so bright that it's impossible to see anyone. So it's fantastic. It's like you're talking into a black wall. So I'll talk a little bit about National Grid. So we're a transmission and distribution company in the Northeast. We serve roughly 7 million accounts, roughly 20 million customers. Rhode Island, New York, and Massachusetts, we are a UK-based company. And really, in my career at Grid, really what I've been trying to do is really how do we change things? How do we make them different? And, I came to the utility as somewhat of an outsider, and I was always the one asking the awkward questions of, like, why are we doing this way? Like, does it really make sense? Can we do it differently? And really that led to a lot of the work we're going to talk about today, because AMI, when you think about it, in the context of what everyone is doing in this room, it doesn't feel like it's a sexy thing. It doesn't feel like it's something that we should be talking about in 2022. Most utilities, I think 80% of customers in the US have smart meters. And the reality is, as we think about smart meters, and hopefully we'll get this from the conversation today, things are different. What we're trying to do is not just deploying smart meters, we're trying to do a lot more than that. So I'll be happy to talk about some of the work we're doing with you guys.
Yeah, I'm trying to get AMI and sexy in the same sentence.
Yeah, I know. It's a tough one, but we'll make it work.
It's a little tricky,
promise
okay? But, well, look, again, I appreciate, your time, you being here today, Carlos. I know you're a busy guy, but, we've been working on this for a while now, okay? So, we're very appreciative of that and the amount of work that goes into it. But could you maybe just talk a little bit more about, your strategy, the National Grid strategy, kind of longer term, right? Because you're really thinking about things differently, okay? And maybe talk a little bit about that as a landscape, for the basis of this project.
Yeah. So this project actually comes at a really interesting time. So for those of you that are aware, in the Northeast, I would say pretty much every state that we serve, they're pushing really aggressively for clean energy goals. You see New York, you see Massachusetts, Rhode Island. Everyone is trying to get the first one, be the first one, the better, the one with most solar, the most wind, the more EVs. And, I always tell people it's really exciting to talk about all those things. The reality is, at the end of the day, when we wake up in the morning, they flip the switch, and that still needs to work. And that's the work that my team and a lot of the folks at Grid do to make sure that all these things that we talk about actually can happen in the most efficient way. And for us, really what we're focused on as a company, I would say it's in 3 or 4 areas. So the first one is transportation. So in the Northeast, obviously transportation is one of the largest sources of emissions. So we're really pushing hard for how do we transform transportation into a more kind of efficient, electrified system. We've done electric buses, we've done school buses, we've done a lot of different things around charging. So that's one of the big priorities for us, is really trying to electrify the whole transportation system. The second one is around electrification of buildings. So if you've ever been in the Northeast, it gets really cold. So I'm really happy to be here at 80 degrees because when I left yesterday, it was 39. So I'm happy to be here. But what that means is for us, heating is a big part of the emissions. And we need to do a lot of work to make sure that we can effectively actually electrify homes for their heating. If you really think about what that means, is we move 3 times more energy on the gas system that we have versus the electric system. And we cannot just simply make the electric system 3 times bigger. So we really need to be creative about how do we get to that goal of electrifying heat and still being able to serve customers every single day. And then the last part is how do we bring distributed resources, whether it's battery, solar, wind, whatever it is, into our system, and how do we use it in the most effective way. So those are, I would say, the 3 things that we're looking at. And I would say probably the biggest thing for me when I started to think about AMI and grid modernization was, in the past, I would say most projects that I had seen around the US, and even the pilots we had done, have all been around kind of one thing. Just, we need to put smart meters because we need to eliminate meter readers on the field. Great. We need to do that because we need to have time of use rates. Fantastic. We need to do it because we can do better outage management. And so everyone had a lot of different reasons why doing AMI was a thing and was a thing that you had to do. And as I thought about it, right, AMI, it's more than just a project that you're doing to replace a bunch of meters. The way I really think about AMI is I'm really building a platform, right? Because when you think about everything that this company has to do within that strategy that I talked about, it's grounded on understanding your customers, knowing what happens in their homes and their businesses every single minute, understanding what's behind that meter and how are all those devices behaving at any given time, understanding what does that mean for our grid, right? One of the things we spend a lot of time talking about is the way we manage our grid. Right now we plan at a substation level, at a feeder level at best, right? In the future, that's not going to be good enough. So you need to be able to understand down to every house, every business, what does that mean for the grid? And then more broadly, as a system, how do you ensure that everything is being balanced in the most efficient way? So when I think about it from a platform perspective, that's what led to kind of what we're going to talk about today, which is we're not just deploying meters. We're actually doing something different. And And that was kind of the challenge I posed to the Landis+Gyr folks several years ago. And I said, if you're going to come to me and tell me that you have the best smart meters in the world because they can give me 15-minute interval or whatever number of intervals, I'm telling you, without issuing an RFP, that's not going to work. And I said that to Landis+Gyr. I said it to pretty much everyone in the industry that would listen. Because I knew that what we had to build was not what was in the market at the time. And that's why it's exciting to talk about AMI in the context of everything that is happening in the industry. It's because it's foundational. It's going to be different to do to achieve that future.
Well, fantastic, Carlos. It's funny when we look back and think about that first time. I think he's being nice because he's on YouTube. Okay, it felt more obtuse at the time. Okay, it was a bit of a challenge. All right, and a challenge that we had been looking at, were interested in, were ready for. And it was fantastic to find somebody like Carlos, like National Grid, that wanted to do this. So from a Landis+Gyr perspective, look, I mean, we're a big meter, AMI company, but one of the things that became very interesting for us is we're one of the few suppliers in the marketplace that have all three lines of products. So we have our residential, our C&I, but we also have grid metering, all right? And we've always appreciated that because from an innovation perspective, you do some of the complex analysis and things in grid metering, and it tends to trickle down into the rest of the portfolio. Well, we met Carlos. He's like, nah, just bring the whole thing. The whole thing, or thereabout, right? We need that entire platform, to use your word, okay? Because the tie point in the grid is shifting. It's changing, right? It's no longer... We don't just need that between transmission and distribution. We need it at every house, every endpoint in the service territory. So that really got us thinking and kind of down the path where we are. So could you maybe, let's go there next, okay? A little bit about that platform, why that's so important, so intriguing, and kind of why we're headed that direction.
Yeah, I'll tell you. So for me, and I don't know if I lost audio, but one of the things that for me was really interesting is I met a company, they're based out of Cambridge, called Sense. For those of you that don't know who they are, Sense essentially, their thing was, it was a small device that would go into your electrical panel, and CT clamps you would put on your panel, and it would tell you everything about your home. And I was doing innovation at the time, went and met with them, like I had done with a bunch of other companies. And they said, this product is great, it's going to do a lot of things. And I'm like, it sounds great, but I mean, if you think about who's going to have an electrician in their home to go and work on the electrical panel, put a box, connect it to the Wi-Fi, like the concept just had a lot of flaws. And for me, it was like, you have something, but I don't see it scaling. It was really hard for me to see that product scaling. So I said, I'll take one of those products, I'll put it home and see how it works. In fact, and this is true story, sat on my counter for 3 months while I had to call an electrician until one day one of the guys in my office said, you're an engineer, you should be able to install this yourself. Go and do it. And I said, okay, fine, I'll do it. So after 3 months, I put it in. And I can tell you, it was really eye-opening because I recognized that even though I was in the industry and I do this for a living, I really didn't know what was actually happening in my house. And when we put this device, we knew that, for example, the light bulbs we had in our kitchen, I knew that they were CFLs at the time, they were not LEDs, but I didn't really have an idea what that actually meant every single time I turned on the lights. And, having 2 young kids, that the lights are always on, so you have to assume that that's your baseline. So I'm like, wow, this is really cool. And the system actually started to use kind of learning algorithms to actually learn what was happening in my house. So after 30 days, the system by itself already knew a lot of the things that I had in my house, the furnace, the AC, actually the water, when you get water from your freezer, that light that comes on, the microwave. And I'm like, wow, this is really cool. Like, because you think about what we need to do to get to this clean energy future we talk about. And one of the biggest things as an industry is we need to get to know our customers. We need to know what actually they do every single day and what they have in their homes and what they don't. So I'm like, you know what? This is something I want to have. Like, as a smart meter, this is what I want to have. So that's essentially the pitch I went to Landis+Gyr with. I actually said, this is what I have in my house. It doesn't work as a box in every single electrical panel, but if you can get it in your meter, that's something. That's actually something that means a lot. So they went and they actually started to work with Sense, and they got to the point where they said, we can actually make this work. We can actually have that every single meter you're going to deploy, it's going to have the ability that you actually will get to offer the customers the ability to understand everything that is happening in their homes without any incremental cost. And I said, that's great. That's a first step. They thought that they were done with the process. I said, that's a good first step. Let's keep working. The second piece we said is, so one of the things, I was also doing a lot of stuff. I was doing VVO, I was doing Flisser, I was doing a bunch of different things kind of separately. And I said to the LNG folks, I said, look, I don't want to have to deal with a bunch of different devices. I have to spend millions and millions of dollars in building a bunch of networks that essentially what they do is they bring data from one device, they bring it to a system, it crunches some numbers, brings it back, takes an action. I'm like, that's great, but as you think about the number of devices that I'm going to have in the field in 5-10 years, the size of the pipes that I'm going to have to build from a telecom perspective are going to be massive. So I need to find a better way to actually do this work without having to move data back and forth. And the best analogy was actually the meter, like the actual cell phone, right? So you don't send the data back and forth, everything you do on your phone. You do a lot of things on your phone itself. And then you give outputs to the consumer that has the phone, or you actually send just the output of something to whatever the company is. So that's the other piece we said. We said we need to be able to actually kind of have the ability to run applications on the meter itself, so we don't actually have to start sending data back and forth. And that was kind of the second part of the equation that we said, we're not going to sign up for something that is not going to give me the ability to process all data on the field. So kind of as we started on that journey, for us, it's been kind of a recognition that I don't serve just the people in customer. I don't just serve people in accounts receivable or CMS. My job at National Grid is to serve pretty much every other function in the company. So they actually have the data they need at the time they need it. And if they need to do stuff on the meter itself, I'm able to do it. And that's what we've been able to build with Landis+Gyr team, is to have really a platform that is so flexible and so scalable that when you go to meetings, and I mean, I'm sure many of you have had to present in front of regulators, there's always this question about, is this thing going to be good in 5 years? And I'm like, well, I don't know. Like, what do I know if in 5 years it's going to work? But I can tell you, having gone through this process, I've been confident in saying, I don't know exactly what's going to happen in 5 to 10 years. That's for sure, right? Because if I knew it, I wouldn't be in the position I'm in, right? I would be in a different position. But what I can tell you is we've built a platform that really creates an ecosystem where companies like the ones that are sitting in this room, people that are in the industry, can come in and play in a safe and secure environment that allows us to deliver value to customers and still deliver the things that AMI is supposed to do. Like, to me, that's table stakes. Being able to bill customers, outage, all that stuff, that's a given. But it builds and it opens the opportunity for a lot of other things for us as a company. And that's exciting part of that for us. When you guys came up with Revelo, we said, that's what we need. That's what we're looking for. We need something that it's not just a meter that does certain things. We need a thing that you can add and build from it as we go in time.
Yeah, fantastic. I love the example of the cell phone. Maybe just to build on that, I had one of our engineers come to me and say, hey, Jay, we built the Tesla of AMI. Okay, that sounds good. What does that mean? So I kind of dug into that. What does the Tesla of AMI mean? And the platform, to your point, is one thing. The ability to make software-defined changes on that platform, okay, is even more important. And from our perspective, if you get down into the bowels of this and the engineering side, that's what's so exciting, right? Yep. Because we're taking hardware out of the equation, giving you a good platform, and allowing you to have software-defined configurability moving forward.
Yep.
And if you can get that baseline in place and really get to that paradigm, it makes you, quote unquote, future-proof, as future-proof as you can be. So look, Carlos, one of the other topics, that we're supposed to be addressing up here, so I want to kind of bring us back to the clean energy future, okay? And how this fits into that. Maybe thoughts on that, please?
So I'll give you a couple of examples. So one of the things that we are, as I said at the beginning, we're pushing really hard for EVs. And one of the biggest challenges, and it's a simple challenge, which I think many of you would face, is you don't know who has an EV and who doesn't, right? Unless I tell you, right? You don't know, right? So you have customers in homes, they're charging, as much as they want or at any times they want, and you don't have a way to offer them a rate that would actually be really convenient for them, right? So with the meters that we're going to be deploying, I don't have to wait until the customer tells me, I have an EV. I actually would know it is most likely a Tesla or it's most likely a Chevy Volt or whatever it is, and I can go and proactively go to that customer and say, by the way, you know that we offer a time of use rates for your EVs, which not only I can tell you kind of in general terms what it means, I actually can tell you based on your usage, based on how much you're using charging your car, I can tell you exactly what it means for you, right? And one of the things that I really struggled with the industry overall is there's a good reason why we always say we need to serve all customers the same, right? That is kind of the mantra from a regulatory perspective. The reality is we live in a world where no one gets served the same, right? You have things that are tailored to you. And as a utility, to get to that clean energy future, I need to be able to do it based on real data that means something to you, right? Think about people that have demand response, right? Simple stuff, right? We spend millions and millions of dollars doing EMMV, evaluation, measurement, and verification on demand response. We spend millions of dollars on doing the same thing on energy efficiency. I don't have to do any of that, right? I'll have to do something different, but I'll get to know, for example, that you switch from this device to this device in your home without you having to tell me, right? So as you think about what we need to achieve, knowing your customers to that level of detail and being able to help them in their journey, whatever their journey they choose to go on, that's what is making this thing valuable for us. On a grid perspective, right? I mean, there's things that people talk about, this digital twin, right? I mean, in full transparency, that's going to happen. Is that going to be the first thing we do? Probably not. But the beauty with this platform is once you have it, people can go at it and start building stuff on top of it without you having to think. The best example for us, which is a real need, we've done volt-var optimization for, 5-6 years, and we are saving 3.5% on our feeders in terms of capacity we're not using. That's real energy being saved, not being wasted. Right now, we invest a lot of money in bringing that data from the feeders into our system so we can then control a capacitor bank in the field. In the future, once those meters are in place, I don't have to do any of that. I can actually calibrate down to every single home because I'll know the voltage and I can have the algorithm for the VVO system running on the meter. And rather than having to be sending data back and forth every second, I can just run it. And if there's an alert or if there's something, I can get that output. That's what I need. That's what I actually can use to take an action. But otherwise, just let it run. So for us, both from a consumer perspective and from a grid perspective, this platform that we're building, it's really an opportunity for us to empower the rest of National Grid to do what they're good at it, right? Which is, if you're planning, imagine being able to know exactly what devices and what load you have in any given feeder so you can do your planning studies, right? You don't have to guess, you'll know, right? If you're in the control system, in the control rooms and you need to start balancing load, do you need to guess what the load is? No, you pretty much know exactly what the profiles and what devices you have running. So for us, it's really about empowering the rest of the organization with the information in ways that are easy for them to consume so we can actually make a tangible difference in getting to that clean energy future.
Yeah, thanks, Carlos. So, you and I have been on stage. We've also been in the audience in the past, right? So I kind of try and think about an audience perspective a little bit as we're talking. And I can't help but wonder if there are folks out there thinking, man, it's hard to make utilities change, all right? And,
Sure
Carlos, you've been very effective at that. I may answer this question myself, too, if I may, because it's not always
I can give you my perspective.
Give me your perspective. And my point was, even on the vendor side, so to speak, it can be difficult as well.
Yep.
All right? So it's not just a challenge in the utility side, but obviously we've been effective at it. You in particular, right, kind of led the charge. So I wonder if you have any advice or guidance, right, when you're looking at transformational or innovative projects in a conservative environment, maybe some advice, if you would.
Yeah, so I would say the best advice, I'm a really stubborn person, which is not a great trait, but it can be actually helpful with certain things. When we started this journey, I always tell people, before we had even kind of gone through the process, everyone's like, we know what we're doing. Like, we know we were going to build a solution. We've done the pilots. We know what it is. Like, everyone kind of assumed we had the answer. I'm like, no, we don't have the answer. We just need to see what's out there and what we can do. And, for me, the biggest thing has been kind of getting people in the journey with us and telling them, look, this is what we're doing, this is why we're doing, and it's hard for me to count the number of meetings I've gone to where people are saying, well, why are you doing this? Why are you spending more money on this? Why are you doing that? And I'm like, the reality is, I'm not spending money on things that I don't think I need. I'm just building a platform that I'm more confident it's going to give us more options than not. And in a world where uncertainty, it's one of the things that we're sure of, I'd rather have more options than less. And that's been my argument pretty much from the beginning. And I can tell you, even bringing regulators along in the journey, regulators are, most of them are also progressive. They're also afraid of kind of what's going to happen. And, in full disclosure, we've gotten LNG to go through the ringer and make sure that what their product they're saying it's going to do, it's going to do. But at the end of the day, we are not in a place where we should be kind of aiming low. We should be aiming high and trying to get the best products we can in front of our customers, in front of our employees, because it's the only way we actually have a real chance of making this happen. And every time I would get in a conversation where people would say, well, you know what, that's great, Carlos, great idea, but we'll do it later. I'm like, you're putting meters for 20 years. The lifespan of a meter, once you deploy it, it's 20 years. If you really think about it, there's a lot of things that are going to change in 20 years. We were talking about Nintendo, right? I still have one at home, right? And the reality is, you would have never guessed that, your phone would have been a full entertainment console, which is what we have today. But what I have tried to do is kind of get people comfortable with the uncomfortable, which is, we just need to make this extra step, because what we're doing, what everyone else has done, it's not going to cut it for the next 20 years. And I'd rather overbuild this thing now than regret it in 5 years and say, oh, I wish I would have put that thing in. Because once you put it in, that's it. You're in it. So it is, it's a journey. It's a journey, but you need to have good partners, right? You guys, in full disclosure, this is not an easy thing, right? We've gone back and forth multiple times, but you need to have people that are aligned into what you're trying to do. And I would say with the Landis+Gyr team, we've been really aligned that we know where we want to get to, and we've been able to kind of work through some of the issues to make it happen. So it is really exciting. It's exciting to see what we can do for the industry, and see how we can actually make a meaningful change.
Yeah. No, the only I'd say steadfast opposed to stubborn. Stubborn has like a negative connotation.
It's fine.
Okay, but very steadfast in that vision. I think the other thing that really helped is there's a market need for this, right? This is not just a pet project from an executive at a large utility. This is somebody that saw the larger market changing and wanting to be able to get ahead of it. And to me, that was the other big piece in this. Is it wasn't about individuals. It was about organizations coming together in a market, that's there and ready for it. So again, a really big piece to that.
And it's funny, I still remember, and this is a side story, when I was in my crazy pitch days of saying, I'm not going to buy a meter that is the same like everyone else. There was one executive in the industry who told me, you don't know what you're doing. No utility in the US, it's going to pay for that. And I said, okay, that's fine. Like that could be true. But I am convinced that what most utility have done in the last few years, it's going to be different moving forward, right? Utilities are behaving in different ways than they've done before. I can tell you one of the things about this program, that it's not just the technology element of it, but we're doing this project on an agile fashion and using a product mindset. So essentially, we've decomposed AMI into a bunch of smaller, discrete products that we can actually develop. And that's how we're building this thing. And I can tell you when I go and talk about careers and I talk about the industry, I tell the younger folks that are coming out of college that the industry is changing, not just because the work we do is changing, but even how we're doing it is changing. And whether it's when you're deploying AMI, whether you're doing a new replacement of a building system, or whether you're building a supercharging highway for electric vehicles, we all need to change the way we've done things. And that to me is one of the things that, as I look back at the journey we've been on, it's one of the things that gives me the most joy. Not just the technology piece is exciting and it's great, but it's actually getting people to say, okay, well, let's try to take a different approach on this. And how you do it matters as much as what you're doing. So I would leave you with that.
No, I agree. I have a lot of pride in that as well, right? I mean, it feels very meaningful. Yep. And, that's special. So, hey, I know we're light on time. We want to take a couple questions. Hey, maybe just last question, okay? Sure. And then we'll take some. Since you've done a great job of kind of predicting the future here, how about roll forward for us a little bit, okay? I mean, even beyond what we're doing today, I almost hesitate to ask this question, but, any thoughts on kind of what happens next?
Yeah, I'm pretty busy with the work I have right now. I think for me, and I think for us as a company, I would say what's coming is it goes back to what I was just saying, which is how do we talk about things? How do we do work internally? Like as a company, we've embarked on this digital thing, and at the beginning, and I would say I'm sure there's people in this audience that would agree. I was like, oh my God, this is kind of like the new thing that everyone now is talking about. And because everyone else is doing it, we need to do it as an industry. And I can tell you, having gone through it myself, we're doing some really cool stuff, but we're doing it differently. Like we're using drones that are going to be using network data to do kind of storm and damage assessment or veg management. There's some really cool stuff, but what I go back to every time we talk about this is we need to make sure we have data so we can actually make better decisions on whatever we're doing. So that's what gives me, even though I'm not thinking as much about the future as I used to before, what gives me comfort is we've built something that will produce enough data and make it available for people in my company and for customers that whatever comes next, I feel comfortable we're going to be able for it.
Good stuff.
I think there's a question in the back.
Yeah, do we have time for maybe a couple questions? Yeah?
One question.
One question, there we go.
Lucky winner.
Your perspective. I guess we know that there are some utilities out there that they rolled out AMI, but they haven't yet been able to get the full benefits of what it offers. Yep. From your experience, what were some of those challenges that National Grid had to overcome to take advantage of what AMI has to offer?
It's a fantastic question. And I would say, in full disclosure, in this room close of friends with everyone on YouTube as well, we were probably heading in that path. When we did our business case in New York, we were planning to go with a Big Bang thing where one day we would flip the switch, everything would light up, and all the systems would be different. And in paper, that sounded like a really logical thing. But when you then talk to people that have deployed this, and when we did it in the demos, you know that that's not the reality, right? When you actually try to do those big bangs, every time you do one of those, it goes horribly bad. So what we've done is actually we've created a product roadmap, and that's what we call it, right? So what we've focused on over the last year or so is in building the platform, like making sure that there's meters, making sure that there's a network, that the data can flow, but that everything that comes outside of it, it's a product by itself. And that product has an owner. And that person is actually vested in making sure that their product is successful in delivering the value they said. So it's less about me as a kind of leader within the organization running the program that I need to tell everyone what to do. I'm actually getting people across the organization to say, we're building this thing. If you have a product that you think it's great, that you think it's going to solve multiple problems, go at it. And I think that de-risks part of the thing that a lot of people have seen, which is great, you have all this data and you don't know what to do with it. The fact that now we have people that are in power and they have the tools internally to use that data has been our goal. And that, I think, eliminates some of this need of like everything will come at once. When you look at that roadmap that we have, it's not one thing and then everything kind of flows. It's multiple years of iterating on products and building new products. And there's some products that I'm sure we're going to change at some point, but we've recognized that this is a journey. This is not going to be a one event where we all say, hurrah, it's done, congratulations, we finish. It's actually going to be, okay, let's think about all the different pieces and let's go in small step increments. And while I know it's frustrating because everyone want to have everything at the same time, the reality is I'd rather take small, discrete things that I can control and get people to work on them rather than going for a big bang.
Well, fantastic. I think that wraps it up here. And Carlos, really appreciate your time.
You, Jay.
Maybe a round of applause for Carlos. Yeah.
Yes, thank you guys so much.